Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, December 8th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joining with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. Let's start off today by talking about something that you wrote about in today's newspaper, Mark.
And the day before,
And the day before, the sentencing of Rod Blagojevich to 14 years prison for his crimes.
Well, you know, if you want to know my honest opinion, and there'll probably be people that would disagree with this, but I think 14 years was a bit excessive. I know Judge Sagel wanted to make a point. The U.S. District Court Judge James Sagel, who sentenced the former governor, but 14 years. I have seen people who have killed people who have gotten less than 14 years. Yes, he needed to be taught a lesson. No, I don't think he understands what he did wrong.
It's going to be 12 years before he's even eligible for parole.
Well, you got to understand. In the federal system, you do 85% of your time.
Yeah.
Assuming you behave well.
Well, assuming you behave well, yes, correct. You know, it's like you look at it in a whole, and you think, well, 14 years. I mean, Blagojevich, I believe, is 57 years old. He's going to be 57, 67. He's going to be in his 70s before he gets out. He's going to miss a lot. He's got a young daughter, who will be graduating from high school and presumably college. Now maybe they'll let him out to look, to see that, but and some people would say, well, that's tough luck. That's, you did the crime, you do the time. But you look at some of the, you look at some of these other crimes that people have done, where you've actually injured people, shot people, robbed people, and you say, well, yeah, public corruption's a bad thing, and people need to be taught a lesson. But boy, 14 years.
Well, I mean, look, you could
sentence.
turn it around. It could be, why are those other sentences so short for those types of crimes?
Because we don't have enough room in prison for people. That's why.
Is there going to be a deterrent, you think, impact from this kind of sentence?
If you go back to biblical times, you see you see the tax collectors that Jesus hung around with, extorting money from people because the Roman government allowed them to do that. So it's just, it's ingrained in the human psyche to take what you can get.
Yeah.
And I think, I really frankly think Blagojevich, like a lot of our homegrown Indiana politicians, just don't get it. They don't understand that what they've done is wrong. It's like, well, gee, this is the way the game's always been played.
Well, the game's changing, though. I mean, look at the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission in Lake County in particular. East Chicago's talking about joining it. Lake County's talking about joining it, and that provides the ethical training so that these people can learn. When I'm thinking is it right or is it not right? Well, they learn what's right.
They either learn, or they learn how to circumvent it, and that's that's more of what I'm worried about. It's rehabilitation of the system has been talked about for so many years, but it just doesn't happen. Everyone who comes in says, I want to be the reform candidate. George Pabay wanted to be the reform candidate. What did he do? He spent money from the city to rehab a house that he and his daughter had bought. Now, is that a reform candidate? Well, I think not. Nor did the United States, nor did the United States government. They thought not as well. But You know, is it reform compared to the previous administration? Well, maybe. It's like, you know, yeah, I stole some money, but I didn't steal this much. And so there's a...
Well, speaking of money, we probably ought to
Yeah.
talk about the $320 million.
Yeah, that's real interesting. This case that came up earlier this week, Mitch Daniels had a press conference and announced that due to this kind of computer bookkeeping error.
And we're talking about Governor Mitch
We're
Daniels
talking
of
about
Indiana.
Governor Mitch Daniels. They basically uncovered $320 million that should have been in the general fund, but wasn't because it was obtained through e-filing, and basically it just kind of sat dormant in this bank account until
Right.
they discovered it. So, you know, the governor tried to paint it as this kind of nice early Christmas gift windfall, a good thing, but others aren't so sure about that.
Now, is this kind of the equivalent, and I'm not trying to be funny here,
Yeah.
but is this kind of the equivalent of going to wash your pants and finding, you know, $10 in it?
No, it's the equivalent of, say you make $100,000 a year. It's going to wash your pants and yeah, just imagine for a $100,000 salary finding $2,500 in your pants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
a
some
lot
serious
of
pocket
money.
money.
If I made $100,000, I might find $2,500 in my pants, but I don't, so I won't.
Well, and it does raise the question of, you know, competence, and this governor who has prided himself on, you know, fiscal responsibility and being the strong business-minded person. You know, there obviously raises some question. What could have been done with that money? First, what could have been done with that money? You know, we've seen tremendous cuts in school district budgets, and because of the state's budget shortfall, which wasn't as bad as we thought. And then what should be done with this money now? It's the other big question.
Well, let me play devil's advocate a minute. You know, you're talking about some of the shortfalls in the schools. $320 million sounds like a lot of money. I mean, as Everett Dirksen might have said. But when you're talking about 92 counties in the state of Indiana, and you're talking about, I don't know how many school districts in the state of Indiana, how much really would that have made a difference?
That was the amount that was cut when they cut K-12 funding. It was $300 million. So, you know, it would have left us with the status quo. Now, there's another way of looking at it. You could say, okay.
Yeah, this money, just to be clear, it's been accumulating for, I think, since 2006, they said.
Right.
So it's been like
it's
5
over a
years.
period
It's
of
over a
years.
period of
Yeah,
5
it's not-
years. So
But now it is a windfall, and so the question is, what do you do with it? This is kind of a situation that Porter County found itself in when it sold the hospital, and then it had, you know, a huge pot of money, and had to decide. Well, still deciding, frankly, what to do with it, and
Well,
just spending the.
you
interest.
have a really good idea. One thing you could do with
Exactly. One thing, $30 million of it, build the Klein Avenue Bridge. That's all the state's share would be, and that's if you use the $150 million replacement cost, because the federal government pays 80% of the cost, the state pays 20% of the cost. So they estimated rebuilding the Klein Avenue Bridge the way it was would be $150 million. Realistically, it would be a smaller, you know, Jenny Light Bridge, you know, a smaller Weight Watchers type bridge, I guess we'll put it as that, because it would be, you know, 4 lanes rather than, you know, what is it, you know, whatever the current number of lanes was, and so, you know, you're slimming it down for the right traffic counts that we have now. You solve a huge problem. You get the Klein Avenue Bridge replaced. You get more Chicagoans spending their money at Ameristar Casino in East Chicago, and Majestic Star and Gary, you know, and so forth. You know, so you're building state revenue in the process, as well as, you know,
I mean,
frankly, just solving
there are going to be
transportation.
people who argue that the money should be rebated to the people. But when you look at the amount, that amount of money, and you look at the number of people in the state of Indiana who pay taxes, you're really talking about a very small amount of money.
Yeah, that's not going to stimulate.
No, that will
No.
stimulate nothing.
No.
It'll
But if you make some wise investments, it could, reap economic benefits down the
Right.
road.
Right,
And
but
certainly
what I'm
Klein
saying is-
Avenue is one of those investments.
Exactly.
But to just rebate it to individuals, you're talking about maybe they'll go out and buy a pack of cigarettes or something.
Well, I mean, you'd put it toward paying off one of your bills,
Yeah.
potentially, but you wouldn't put it toward, creating jobs.
Right.
I would love to pay off one of my bills.
Let's shift gears here to local Lake County politics. Real interesting that we saw the redistricting maps for the county council and the county commissioners. Something curious about the county commissioners: there was not one map, but two maps. Why were there actually two
Well,
different redistricting maps?
It all comes down to basically the Democrats and the Republicans, and there's a Lake County Redistricting Commission, which is the Indiana Election Commission, renames itself for the purpose of redoing the maps, basically, is what it comes down to. And the Democrats and the Republicans couldn't agree, so this was the compromise. The incumbent, Jerry Shub, gets to keep, his advantage in the 2012
For this,
election
yeah.
with that map. And then the map changes as soon as he's elected.
In 2013.
Assuming he's, reelected. And, and then...
Representative
Right,
democracy.
democracy.
Who cares? Yeah, right.
Exactly. It's just
No,
crazy.
Now, if you remember correctly, the commissioner's map was used to be drawn so that you had a guaranteed Republican district. You had let's picture Lake County as a square, and you had a line drawn through the middle of the square, and then a line drawn down to that line. You had two Democratic districts, one in the Hammond, Munster, Highland, Griffith area,
Right.
okay, and one in the Gary area, Gary, Hobart, Lake Station area.
Right.
Then you had the South Lake County, which was pretty much a guaranteed Republican district. And that's why you almost always had two Democratic commissioners and one Republican commissioner.
Or at least a fair chance at it.
Well, it was more than a fair chance. It was almost guaranteed. And this is why Ernie Niemeyer, kept getting elected, because he would run from the South County district, and he would get elected, and then you'd have the one split up here. But you'd have I'm trying to think of you had Steve Corey and you had Anderson Span, I think, up there. But so you had two Democrats. But what the Democrats did was they took that same square, they drew two lines down, creating three districts, 1, 2, 3. So you had all the heavily Democratic areas in the top, and then a fairly sparsely populated Republican area in the bottom, and that all but guaranteed 3 Democratic seats, which is what you've got now.
So, so the two maps, I think, is a very unusual thing. Maybe it's been done before. I haven't.
Well,
heard
and
of
it
such
speaks
a
to it's just seems wrong that people would elect someone and then the boundaries change.
And then you're not
so,
representing the
so-
people who elected you.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just doesn't speak well for Lake County, which
No, it doesn't.
along another in the long line of things that doesn't speak well for Lake County
Exactly.
politics. So
Well, yeah, you got to consider what you're dealing with here, and you're dealing with Lake County politics,
yeah.
and whether it speaks well of it or not, that's what you're going to get.
So we're back.
Right.
We're back here. Ethics.
Exactly.
And I'm sure we'll be talking
It's
about
not necessarily
more.
unethical.
Well-
I don't think.
Well,
We'll be talking more about these issues, obviously, in coming weeks. So we thank you for watching this week. We'll be back next week with another political roundtable.